on June 28th, 2022, the Securities and Exchange Commission, we know it as the SEC, they issued a press release that announced that Ernst Young's U.S. firm had to pay a $100 million fine because its employees were cheating on their ethics exams, and Ernst Young was also like misleading. They were so not only were Ernst Young employees cheating on their ethics exam, then when the SEC is like saying, "Hey, Ernst Young, are your people cheating on the ethics exam?" Ernst Young is like, I don't know, maybe. And they were like, they absolutely knew. So they were misleading the SEC during their investigation. Right. And so it's like this convoluted, like, cheating on an ethics exam right there. That's like, that sort of breaks your brain. But then it's like also lying about cheating on your ethics is like the third turn in the whole story. This is Oh My Fraud, a true crime podcast where our Ernsts are young instead of our countries for men being old. I'm Greg Kyte.
And I'm Caleb Newquist. Greg,
yes.
What kind of student were you? Were you a good student?
Yeah, I was a pretty awesome student in school. I got bused to a magnet school for the gifted and talented in elementary school.
Really?
Yep, I absolutely did. That's why I had no friends in my neighborhood, because I got bussed out of town to another place.
Okay.
Yep. So
how good of a student were you?
Well, I got better and better. In high school, I had a 3.95 GPA, which is also weird because I still wasn't in the top 5% of my graduating class. But then I had a 3.45 when I graduated from the University of Washington with my math degree, which obviously 3.45 is lower than 3.95, but it was also, college.
Respectable.
But then, exactly, when I went back to school to get my undergraduate in accounting, I got all A's except for one A- in macroeconomics because of a goddamn group project that screwed me. And
always
my crowning achievement, educationally, I got a 4.0 in my MBA program from Utah State University. So
nice. Look at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice work. So did you ever, here's a maybe touchy subject, but maybe not. Did you ever cheat in school? Like, did you ever copy the answers on homework, or did you look off somebody's test or anything like that?
Yeah, I cheated on everything in my MBA program, and that's how that's how I got my perfect 4.0. No, it's funny. I don't actually I don't have any solid memories of actually like cheating on any tests or anything like that.
What about the CPA exam? I mean, cheating on that seemed more or less impossible to me. When I took it, it was still pencil and paper. And I remember in Colorado, we took it at a place called the Merchandise Mart, which was just this big, this giant open air, kind of like a Quonset, basically. And like we were all in there, like rows and rows and rows and tables of people taking the exam, and there were proctors pacing the floor just everywhere during the entire 2 days that we were taking the test. And so like it just, I mean, even if I had no plans to cheat, but like just the monitoring that was going on is like, I don't know how anyone would cheat anyway. It just, in any kind of significant way that would make a difference. It just seemed impossible to me.
Right. And I kind of felt the same way, because I took the computer-based exam.
Yeah.
And same thing. I don't even know how anybody could cheat, because the information that they're testing for is so broad.
Yes.
That like you'd have to bring in like a textbook that was full of post-notes that were well labeled.
Yeah.
Even then you'd waste so much time digging through that book that you wouldn't have time to finish that section of the test.
No, you wouldn't finish, and that's worse. Like, what if I remember right?
Right.
When I was studying, they said just get through the section. like if you don't finish it, like especially like the big essay and computational questions at the end, because those were worth so much. He's like, if you don't get to those, like it's not going to go well for you. And so like if you're wasting all this time trying to get multiple choice questions right, like you would never get to the questions that are worth a bunch of points. So I don't know.
Well, and you think back to like those movies in the 80s, like the high school movies where people have the answers written like on their forearm underneath their sweater, and and it's like you don't have enough forearm to have the information that would help you at all in the CPA exam. I do like to think, though, I didn't cheat on the exam. I like to think that I cheated the system, though, Caleb.
Oh,
because well, so like you were saying, it's important to get through the entire test. And the very first section I took was audit, and I almost like I barely got through everything. But that's because I can't remember how it was, like a 3-hour test, 3.5-hour test, something like that. And I had to use the bathroom partway through it. And in the testing center I was at, the bathroom was like on the other side of the building from where the computer lab was, where we were taking the test. So it probably took me like literally, it probably took me 10 minutes to just go pee during the middle of the test. And so when I got to reg, I was like, well, screw that. And so I wore adult diapers to the reg section of the test so that I would not have to go to the bathroom. And then of course, that reg, I think, is the shortest of all 4 of the sections of or at least I think it was, if it wasn't the shortest, it was one of the shorter ones then. And that was the only section where I didn't have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the test. But listen, you were prepared. No, listen, if you go to the CPA exam wearing adult diapers, I was like, I'm not going to not use these while I'm here. So I forced myself to piss myself during reg just because I didn't go to all that trouble to not to piss myself. And then the best part was, in my mind, I was like, hey, afterwards I'll go into the, whatever the restroom is in the testing center. I'll rip them off and I'll just commando my way home. I didn't think about the fact that the restroom at the testing center might not be like a single occupant kind of situation.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So I'm in this bathroom after the test. There's plenty of people who have to go to the bathroom after this test, and I'm in the stall taking my pants off and ripping off this adult diaper in a very not inconspicuous way. So yeah, I cheated the system.
Well, that's one for the ages, Greg, right there.
Yeah.
But as you know, Greg, and as many of our listeners know, after you pass the CPA exam, we're jumping past a lot of this stuff, but once you pass that exam, CPA candidates in many states, they also have to pass an ethics exam, which brings us to the subject of today's episode, Greg.
Yeah, cheating. And not just any cheating on an ethics exam, the shortest path to hell.
All right, so to start off, some background for those not familiar. In order to become a certified public accountant, aka CPA, a person must pass the Uniform CPA examination. In 2023, at the time of this recording, the CPA exam consisted of 4 sections, or it consists of 4 sections. I'm speaking in the present tense. What the fuck is wrong with me?
Yeah, we're here right now.
Right, we're here right now. Those 4 sections are auditing and attestation, business environment and concepts, financial accounting and reporting, and regulation. And candidates must achieve a grade of 75 on each section to pass the exam.
Caleb, did you fail any of the 4 sections? Did you have to retake any of the 4?
I did not. Nope. Passed all 4.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Me too. First shot. Good work. Nice work.
Nice work, Greg. Okay.
Thank you.
Once, which, by the way, most people don't do it the first shot.
We're exceptional.
Yeah. You said it, not me. So anyway, once all those 4 sessions are passed, as we kind of alluded to, the candidates are not done. Most U.S. states require CPA candidates to pass an ethics exam, and many of those states simply use an exam that's developed and put out by the AICPA, which, again, if you're not familiar, it is a professional association for certified public accountants. And so they have a course and they put it out. And if you pass that exam, that counts as passing the ethics assessment requirement. But even a few states have their own test. But generally speaking, that's how it works.
Where were you licensed? Were you licensed in New York or in Nebraska?
Colorado and New York. I was originally
and New York.
Yeah, originally licensed in Colorado, and then when I moved to New York, I got licensed in New York.
Gotcha. Did you have to? My guess is New York probably had their own. Is that correct?
I did not have to pass the ethics in New York. It was because it was what do you call it? Because I was already licensed. Yeah, I think I just qualified for reciprocity because I was already licensed in Colorado. So
gotcha.
At my first job, I remember taking the ethics exam at the firm where I was working, which was just a small firm. I remember and we'll get into the details in a bit, but I did it at work.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And since we're talking about these ethics tests, we'll just go into detail a little bit here, but they're actually very straightforward. They're entirely multiple choice. Yeah. They're open book. And what I mean by open book is that you're provided materials that will have the information that will help you answer the questions. But it's kind of tricky because it's not a walk in a park. Like the ethics exam is actually quite difficult. You have to get 90% of the answers, or I'm sorry, you have to answer 90% of the questions correctly. And it is kind of notoriously difficult. Like these ethics questions, there's like, it's the classic, there's two very, there's two answers that are very, very possibly likely, and you just have to pick the right one. And lots of people don't pick the right one. So it's a tough test, even if it's open book.
Well, and they get into the nitty gritty of some of the stupid rules about independence where it's like,
yep.
So if you are you independent if your second cousin
yeah.
owns an immaterial amount of shares in a company that you didn't audit, but that your firm is auditing? And it's like,
yes.
Oh, Jesus, okay.
Yeah.
And so you have to, it's the minutia is what they're after. And must be why they justify the fact that it's open book.
Yep. And the other thing that's important is that you can't waste a ton of time in terms of waiting to pass this ethics exam, because I believe most jurisdictions require you to pass it either within a year or two of when you passed your last section of the CPA. So if you're working a ton of hours at a CPA firm, those 1 or 2 years, they can go by fast.
They can. Although, how quick did you take yours? I took mine immediately.
More or less immediately, but like I was working. See, here's where I remember it like it was yesterday. I took the test in the fall. I didn't get my results until the following February. So it was my first
ethics exam?
No, for my CPA exam. So
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so I didn't get my results. So nowadays, people get their results back real fast, relative like less than in a month, basically, right? Or
yeah, I think more. So. Yeah,
yeah. So back for the written exam, it was more like 4 months, and
okay.
So only then do I think I took the ethics exam after that. So it was in the middle of my first busy season. But I do remember like getting on it right away. Like I remember not wasting any time. But I have heard stories about people who are not messing around, but like they just put it off. They just procrastinate. Yeah. And then like time gets chewed up and then they're like running up against the deadline, whether it's a year or 2 years or whatever it is. Yeah, you can't really do that. You're better off just getting it out of the way.
Yeah. It's back in the paper pencil days when you had to take it. It must have been difficult to know which carrier pigeon had your results and not one of your coworkers' results. Did that mess you up at all?
It didn't personally mess me up, but
Okay.
I can imagine that this was something that happened from time to time.
Okay. Well, one way or another, that's a great sum up of
Yeah.
the ethics portion. The ethics requirement for becoming a licensed CPA in pretty much every state in the
Mhm.
country. But let's go ahead and jump into the actual case we're talking about for this episode, because it's marvelous.
It's marvelous.
What
Yeah.
happened. It is. It's jaw-droppingly stupid and marvelous and all of that. So the summary of the SEC order, which we have in the show notes, it has all the details, but here's a pull quote from that summary, and it says that 49 Ernst Young audit professionals sent and or received answer keys to CPA ethics exams. In addition, hundreds of other audit professionals cheated on CPE courses, including those addressing CPA's ethical obligations, and a significant number of EY professionals who did not cheat themselves but knew their colleagues were cheating and facilitating cheating violated the firm's code of conduct by failing to report this misconduct. So if you know somebody's cheating on their CPE, you're supposed to narc them out. That's in the code of conduct at Ernst Young. Make sense, Caleb?
Makes perfect sense, Greg.
Yeah. And it's also, like we said, this whole cheating about cheating and lying about cheating on cheating, it's like too ironic it sounds too ironic to be even real. It sounds so ironic it couldn't even be an Alanis Morissette song. It's because it's actually ironic and not just unfortunate. It's even absurd and ridiculous. And
we're here for it.
Here's the
we're
thing.
here for it, Greg.
Right.
We are. Here for it.
But the SEC, like, it was so weird. The SEC had a hard time even believing what was happening. Gerber Gruel, the director of the SEC's enforcement division, is quoted in a press release as saying, "It's simply outrageous that the very professionals responsible for catching cheating by clients cheated themselves on ethics exams of all things. And it's equally shocking that Ernst Young hindered our investigation of this misconduct. This action should serve as a clear message that the SEC will not tolerate integrity failures by independent auditors who choose the easier wrong over the harder right," which he probably felt pretty smug about that last turn of phrase.
Yep.
And clearly, but that's also SEC speak for we're super pissed about what you did.
Yeah, they sound real mad.
Yeah.
Okay, Greg. Here's a rundown of everything from the SEC order, because I think there's some necessary background and context so the listeners can fully understand why this cheating scandal is so ridiculous. You ready?
Yeah, lay it on us.
Okay. Way back. Oh, and by the way, we didn't mention it earlier on, but Ernst Young, if you are not familiar, I know many of the listeners are, but some of you may not be. Ernst Young is one of the largest accounting firms in the world. I think it's the third largest firm in the world, if I'm not mistaken.
That's my understanding.
Yep.
Yeah, number 3.
They have offices in well over 100 countries. The U.S. firm is the largest firm. And I think the revenues for the U.S. firm is around like $13 or $14 billion. So, I mean, they make gobs and gobs and gobs of money.
Yeah, 13 or 14 billion with a B.
Yeah, and that's just in the U.S. Yeah. Globally, it's like
staggering.
It's over $40 billion or something. I mean, it's a huge firm, and they employ hundreds of thousands of people worldwide, tens of thousands in the U.S. It's a big firm. So big name.
Yep.
Okay. So way back
I'm on board.
Yeah, rightio, man. Way back in December 2014, an internal EY whistleblower reported a flaw in the firm's software that allowed people to pass CPE exams without the required number of correct answers. So, again, a little bit of explanation maybe. If you aren't familiar, once you're licensed as a CPA, you have to earn a certain number of what they call continuing professional education credits, or CPE. You'll hear us mention it a bunch. But you have to have a certain number of hours every year to keep your license active. And you have to do things like listen to a podcast to earn those hours. Greg, you're still an active CPA. How many hours do you have to get in a year?
We have to get 80 every 2 years. So
Okay.
Which I mean, that's standard. Wherever I just talked to a guy from Ohio, he's got to get 120 every 3 years.
Okay.
But in Ohio, you can't leave all 120 till the very end. You have to get at least 20 every year. But basically, everywhere as far as I know, everywhere in the United States, it averages out to 40 credits per year is what you need to keep your license active.
Great. Got it. Okay, cool. So these EY employees, they're trying to earn the CPE credit so that they can keep their licenses active. And they figure out that there's a glitch in the system that lets them cheat to get it done. So this is happening in 2014. And after this whistleblower reports this flaw and the firm does an investigation, they learn that from 2012 to 2015, more than 200 Ernst Young professionals in multiple offices had exploited this glitch to pass CPE exams. Okay. And as a result of this, Ernst Young punished a lot of these people and reminded everyone that cheating is bad. Okay. Not cool. Violates our code of conduct, et cetera, et cetera. So far, so good?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, first off, it's always completely ineffective to send out an email to everyone in the company going, hey, just heads up, doing bad things is bad. We just want to make sure that you knew our official position on this.
Right.
So that's a little bit ridiculous. But I mean, this is me more taking a softer approach on this, because you said that the glitch in the system was you could pass the CPE exams with a lower score than what is required by the regulatory bodies that regulate CPE. But I could see it if you're an employee at Ernst Young taking some Ernst Young CPE and it shows you your score and maybe you got 60 right, because usually most CPE, my understanding is you got to get 80% right to get credit for your CPE, maybe 70%, somewhere around there. But let's say you got just a little bit below what you should have gotten to. Well, and I don't know, that's even a tell right there. I don't know what the exact percent is you have to get on a CPE exam, and I take CPE exams all the time. But when it says I pass, I go, oh, hooray, I passed. Cool. I don't have to retake that quiz. And I give the software the benefit of the doubt that it's smarter than me. So if it said you got 55% right, you passed, I'd go, okay, that seems low, but cool. So I will take my CPE and I will move on.
Yep.
I'm probably not going to go to my higher ups and go, hey, I noticed this thing where I got a lower score than I thought should give me credit, but it still give me credit. I'm not supposed to have credit, right? That's the kid in school who asks the teacher if they forgot to give out homework at the end of the day when the teacher hadn't given out homework that day. So I mean, I can give some of the Ernst Young people a break for I think just because you got a lower score than was required doesn't necessarily mean that you were acting nefariously. That's basically what I'm getting at.
You're allowing for a more nuanced kind of situation.
Yes. Although, at the same time, once that glitch was found out by Ernst Young, the right thing for them to do would be to go back to all their employees and go, hey, so you know how you got that 55% and it said you passed? You didn't, so you need to go do it again. That's the other side of it, is that Ernst Young itself may have been acting nefariously or not taking full responsibility once they did figure out that glitch happened.
Right. All right. So despite the firm warning its employees about cheating, the cheating continued. And in 2016, and again, remember, this is all from the SEC order. In 2016, Ernst Young learned that people in its Denver office had shared answer keys to CPE exams. Okay? Slightly different.
Those bastards.
Slightly different method, but cheating nonetheless, Greg.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And finally, in 2017, the firm learned that 2 people had cheated on their ethics exams. And
2 people. Wait, so what?
Yeah.
What's the head count at a place like Ernst Young? We're talking like thousands, right?
I mean, nationwide, it's in the tens of thousands.
But they found 2.
Yes. And like, I don't remember, you'd have to go back to the order for like this particular instance in 2017. Because this is specifically talking about 1 year, but they had learned that 2 people had cheated on their ethics exams. And now, Greg, some more cheating going on. What do you suppose the firm did next?
They put the 2 people who cheated on a YouTube video where they berated them publicly to let the rest of the Ernst Young staff learn from their example.
Yeah, there was a flogging. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, more or less.
Yeah. Kind of a tarring and feathering. I'm envisioning.
If only. I wish that would be. Would have made those my going concern days so much easier. No, they just sent out another fucking email and just told people not to cheat. Like,
don't stop, knock it off. That was
knock it off.
That
guys.
was the email.
That was pretty much. So okay. On June 17th, so we're jumping ahead a little bit here. On June 17th, 2019, the Securities and Exchange Commission issued an order against another firm, KPMG. Full disclosure, I used to work there.
I thought that I was going. That was you, right, Caleb? But you
wasn't there. I wasn't there. I wasn't there in 2019. But in any case,
when did you stop working for KPMG? It wasn't even in the teens. You were still in the aughts when you were out at KPMG.
No. That was long ago. No, my tenure ended there in 2008.
Okay, so this was long before anyone started cheating at KPMG.
I'm sure. Yes, I'm sure. Anyway, so again, June 17th, 2019, the SEC issues an order against KPMG for, among other things, cheating on internal training exams. And they fined KPMG $50 million. 2 days later.
Can I stop for just a second about
that?
Sure. I do think even knowing how much revenue these companies make, a fine for $50 million for cheating on training exams seems like it's not a slap on the wrist. That's it. It seems gigantic for the infraction of cheating on continuing education. Did you feel that same way? What's your sense on that?
I don't know. Like, I feel like these agencies, they have kind of like formulas, or I don't know. They have to come up with these numbers somehow. They just don't pull them out of the air, right? But in the case of this, I mean, I don't know. It's like, this was also around the time that KPMG got busted for stealing. Like, they were cheating on their PCAOB inspections. So It's just one of those things where you're just like, 50 million. But because the size of the firm, it just feels like it always feels like a slap on the wrist to me, because the fines are small and the firms are so big. It just always feels like a slap on the wrist to me.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking a fraction of 1% of the revenue. Is $50 million. But on the other, I would think if you're cheating on your cheating on your PCAOB reviews, the PCAOB, the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, that they're the ones who make sure they're supposed to be like a regulatory quality control group for auditors.
Yep.
And so they're double checking the auditors' work to make sure the auditors are doing their audits. They're auditing the auditors is what they're doing.
Correct.
And so if you're lying to the auditors who are auditing your audits, that seems like a bigger deal than, I got some help getting through jumping through these hoops at work. Because that's, and I got more to say about the jumping through hoops at work, but still, I feel like $50 million, which was only half of what Ernst Young got dinged, is both of those are staggering just for cheating on CPE. To me, I feel like they are. But you're also right that it's not big picture. Those firms are just fine.
Yeah. Okay. So SEC issues this order against KPMG. 2 days later, June 19th, EY's U.S. chair and managing partner sends a message out to all its employees and says, hey, don't cheat on CPE stuff. Okay?
Yeah.
So another warning about cheating. Okay? That same day, June 19th, the Securities and Exchange Commission inquired of EY if it had, quote, received any ethics or whistleblower complaints regarding testing associated with any EY training program or continuing professional education course, end of quote. So what I'm guessing here is the SEC said, maybe let's just ask around and see if these other firms have had any similar things happen.
Right.
That's my guess.
Right. Yeah.
Perfectly reasonable thing to do. And so that's what they did.
Absolutely.
So EY got the request and they responded the next day, June 20th. And in that response, they described 5 matters relating to cheating. One of those included the 2 ethics exam cheaters from 2017 that we mentioned a little earlier. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This response did not mention anything about any current issues with cheating. Okay. So you might be wondering, well, what about that? Why is that important? Well, the day before they submitted that response to the SEC, again, they responded on the 20th. So on June 19th, an employee reported to a manager that a professional in the firm's audit group had emailed the employee answers to a CPA ethics exam. That afternoon, the manager informed an EY human resources employee of the tip, which was then relayed to others in EY's human resources group.
Okay. So on the 20th, they said they just didn't say that there was any current issues with cheating, but the day before that, some issues with cheating had just been brought to their attention.
Yes, correct. And then
marvelous.
Yep. And then this next bit here, senior Ernst Young attorneys got the SEC's request on June 19th, like we said. They reviewed the response that was submitted on June 20th, and by no later than June 21st, the next day, the senior EY attorneys knew about the June 19th tip about the employee who had received the answers to the ethics exam.
Okay, so with that in mind, because that was one of the things I was thinking. It's like, okay, if on the 19th somebody says, hey, some knucklehead sent me some stuff to cheat on an ethics exam, I could see, especially in a giant organization like Ernst Young, that it would take a beat for it to get from the initial whistleblower to the upper management. And then since they had submitted their thing the day before these guys actually heard about it, I could see them going, well, that was actually, what's that? The thing that you sign is like everything
to the best of my knowledge
is true. Exactly, to the best. And it was on June 20th.
Yes.
But on June 21st, and I go, these guys are attorneys, and they're going, to the best of our knowledge, that was right. So timing was pretty good on this, that we didn't receive this information till June 21st.
Right. Pushes up glasses. So I'm just curious what you think, Greg. I think everything you're saying is valid, and knowing lawyers or knowing lawyers' reputation, fair or unfair, I think everything you said is probably pretty accurate. But what do you think, Greg Kyte, is actually the prudent move here? Or as they say in Frozen 2, what is the next right thing?
Well, since they cheated on the ethics CPE, I'm going to say that these guys didn't know ethics. So I guess they were more like into the unknown. Also from Frozen 2, you're not the only person who had children who were of the right demographic to be enamored with Frozen 2. I also had, although yours are just getting into it, right?
This
is fresh for you.
Yeah, that's very fresh.
Right. But here's the thing. So all of that aside, and you know this, Caleb, because we've talked about ethics tons.
Yep.
Transparency is the silver bullet for ethics. If
Right.
you, when in doubt, tell people what you know. So regardless of the fact that the attorney cited the thing that says, to the best of my knowledge, the foregoing information is perfectly accurate, the next day they find stuff up. Transparency is the right answer. They needed to follow that up with another communication to the SEC going, hey, I know we just sent you something yesterday, but weird, we just found out about this stuff today. And that would have been just by, and again, I get it that Ernst Young, especially seeing the KPMG got fined $50 million, their butts were puckered up about this whole thing, and they absolutely didn't want to narc themselves out. But that's not the right approach to go with this stuff, because Caleb, all of this stuff is, everyone's actions on all of this is to maintain the reputation of CPAs in the marketplace. That's why the SEC wants to fine companies $50 million and $100 million for cheating on internal professional education courses, because any cheating is going to undermine what they're doing, which is the whole irony of the entire thing, that people who are looking, that as an auditor, you're looking for other people who are cheating, and when you yourself are cheating, then all of a sudden you're no good to anybody at that point. But also, the CPA firm themselves has to realize that their reputation is based on their being ethical. And so then you go, okay, maybe we're going to try to cover it up so nobody ever figures out about this stuff. But when you get caught, you're double damned, and they played their cards wrong. And again, if they had just played along, it wouldn't have become this big fucking deal that it was. You with me?
Totally
Hello?
with you. Yes,
Caleb?
absolutely. But that's not what happened, Greg. That's not what happened.
That's not what happened. No,
That's not what happened.
not at all. Absolutely not. So what Ernst Young did instead, and again, according to the SEC order that we have mentioned before, the tip EY's submission failed to include involved cheating on CPA ethics exams. It was sufficiently concerning to the firm that it began an extensive investigation. Yet despite the message from EY's U.S. chair and managing partner only 2 days earlier about the importance of integrity and honesty, that's the email we were talking about, EY did not correct its submission to the SEC's enforcement division.
And as you've kind of established this, Greg, but do you think it's weird that they didn't correct that submission? I get the sense that you don't think, you think it is weird, but it's actually not weird.
Yeah, it's, well, I mean, again, it's hypocrisy and it's irony, because like the order says, it's like 2 days ago, hey, higher ups at Ernst Young, you just sent an email out saying, hey, let's be honest in what we're doing. And then 2 days later, you're like, hey, but yeah, let's not tell them about this cheating thing that's going on here.
That's just between us, right?
Yeah, exactly. Which, and again, it's one of those things where I get it, how they can rationalize it, where it's like, well, we're not lying, we're just not being completely forthright. And it's like, it's the same fucking thing.
Right.
And they know it's the same fucking thing. And especially as auditors, they need to know it's the same fucking thing, because they're trying, their job is to have professional skepticism and to pin their clients to the wall, even though that's a whole nother story as to whether or not they're actually independent from their clients that pay them and if they really will pin them to the wall. But in theory, that's what they do. And they would in no way take the explanation of, well, it's not that we lied, you didn't ask the right question, or you didn't ask the question on the right day.
Right.
So it's all
timing.
It's
a timing difference.
Exactly. And then the other thing is that I'm sure, and again, even my bias in this direction was revealed earlier in our conversation, but they probably saw CPE as just being red tape, just being hoops that you got to jump through, and not really being important. So they were like, this is kind of, we're still good at what we do, even if we don't jump through the hoops that are required of us. But that that's pervasive in our profession. And I guess maybe there was still some what is it? What's the first day? Denial. Maybe there was still some denial that the SEC really was that serious about enforcing things like cheating on internal training exams, even after seeing KPMG getting dinged by it.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's weird. It's weird, even though I think I can get inside their head and figure out maybe how they justified it to themselves. But
Right.
regardless of all of that, Ernst Young started its own investigation that revealed, again, in the SEC order, quote, significant misconduct. And here's a larger pull quote from the order again. It says, despite all of the warnings, EY audit professionals had continued to cheat by using answer keys that they had received from colleagues to pass exams and sharing answer keys with others. The investigation confirmed that audit professionals in multiple offices cheated on CPA ethics exams. They also cheated on a wide variety of CPE courses, including courses on ethics. And why did they cheat? Well, the SEC says this. Many professionals acknowledged during the firm's investigation that they knew their conduct violated EY's code of conduct, but they cheated because of work commitments or an inability to pass training exams after multiple attempts.
Ugh.
And, right, which, well,
Too busy.
What's your knee-jerk?
Too busy.
Right.
Had to cheat because I was busy.
Right, which is BS, but also it's not, because
Yep.
you know from, I mean, you know, because you're in a Big Four firm, and you
Mhm.
know from all of the horror stories that people sent into you when you were at Going Concern, that they're not wrong. When you're required during busy season to work 60 billable hours per week, you're
Yep.
probably going to be passing another CPE test is probably pretty low on your to-do list, right?
It sure is. Yes.
Yeah. The part that's weird to me is people who had an inability to pass these exams after multiple attempts, because
Yeah.
having taken hundreds and hundreds of hours of continuing professional education, none of the exams are that hard. I mean, they're so basic. It's just like, were you half paying attention? It's not like what we said about the original CPA licensure ethics exam, where it is
Right.
very detailed. For just the training exams, it's usually like, yeah, as long as your head wasn't up your butt or you weren't sleeping, you should be able to get at least a passing score on the exam. Right? That's my experience. Was yours similar to that?
That tracks for me, man.
Okay. Even for KPMG internal training, it was still the same, where the exams were not.
I mean, like, and especially in the matters of, like, I mean, unless you're being tested, like, as the example you gave earlier is, like, unless you're being tested on, like, the specifics of independence, which audit firms do, they do have to, you did have to pass those, and they still have to pass those on an annual basis.
Mhm.
And those can be tricky.
Right.
But even still,
Yeah.
you can pass them eventually. Like, they're not so
Right.
difficult.
Right.
That it would be
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's like, oh, this is my 13th attempt, and I'm still, it's like, it shouldn't. I mean, come on.
Right.
It's the same
Now,
test every time.
full disclosure, back in the day, this was back in 2008, 2009.
Mhm.
I tried to pass the QuickBooks Advanced Pro Advisor exam,
Oh,
and I probably took it 20 times and failed every single time on that. So I also know there are some that are just beasts, but in my defense, just the regular, because that was the Advanced Pro Advisor test, just the regular Pro Advisor test, I passed that, and I think I'd opened QuickBooks like a total of 12 times. So there's different levels. But all that
But
said,
what about Greg?
let's talk about yes.
Let's talk about those. What about those professionals who knew about the cheating and didn't report it?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Why didn't they speak up, Greg?
Right, because as we said in an earlier quote from the report, is that itself is a violation of Ernst Young's code of conduct. So again, another pull quote from this order. It says, many of these EY professionals attributed their silence to a lack of appreciation that sharing exam answers constituted cheating and violated Ernst Young's code of conduct, and a desire to avoid getting colleagues in trouble. So they were saying, hey, I didn't know that telling people the answers to a test that they haven't taken yet, I didn't know that was cheating. Bullshit. And I didn't know that Ernst Young had some kind of code of conduct that said that I couldn't help people cheat. Bullshit. And probably the biggest thing is I didn't want to narc out my friends because, stitches get snitches I'm going to stay with snitches get stitched.
Close enough.
I just fucked up my fucking thing. And that, as children, we're told not to tattle on our friends. So,
right.
So that last part, I think, is the one part that holds. All told, 91 audit professionals requested, used, or shared answer keys with colleagues after EY's U.S. chair and managing partner sent the message highlighting the SEC enforcement action against KPMG, yet again reminding personnel not to cheat, and yet again discussing the importance of integrity. So their idea of how to squash this was clearly completely ineffective.
Now remember, senior EY lawyers knew that their submission to the SEC was incomplete pretty quickly. They learned of the tip about cheating on the ethics exams the day after their report was submitted, and they did not correct it. Those senior EY lawyers did, however, inform the firm's executive committee and senior management. And here's a quick recap of what all of those people knew, okay? In October of 2019, 3 months after the submission, EY's senior management knew that, number one, the SEC had sanctioned KPMG for exam cheating by its professionals. They knew that the SEC staff had asked EY about tips it had received involving exam-related misconduct. They also knew that EY had received a tip about sharing answer keys to the CPA ethics exam. They also knew that the cheating involved more than a small number of individuals in a single office, and the firm had not disclosed the tip that they received. They had not disclosed that to the SEC. So with all that, the firm then broadened its investigation, according to the order, but they still didn't correct their submission from June. So 3 months have gone by and they haven't corrected their submission. But their investigation has continued and the scope of it has gotten bigger. But why are they doing this, right? So why haven't they corrected the record with the SEC? Well, here's what the order says. EY decided to inform the PCAOB, okay, who we talked about a little bit earlier. However, it would not do so yet. EY decided to delay disclosing the misconduct even to the PCAOB until the extent of the misconduct within the firm was clearer and EY had a credible plan in place to address the problem. Okay. So, Greg, is that a good reason to not tell them about the tip that they got about the ethics exam cheating? Are you buying the logic? Are you buying the logic here of these internal EY leaders?
Short answer, no. It's not a good that's not a good reason. However, I also, if I put myself into their position and go, especially once they make the initial decision to not immediately go back to the SEC and go, hey, a day after we put in that thing, we found out some more information. Then you can start maybe trying to cover your ass by going, yeah, we were looking into it internally to try it. Because if it was just one person who received this answer key, then that's not a big deal. But we wanted to see if it was a bigger issue than that. We wanted to do a thorough investigation to see just how far this went. And then we were going to tell you everything that we found out about it. But you should have been like, hey, no, we found this out. Please hold while we find out the extent of it. So that's how that would have been the right way to do things. But again, I think they were very motivated by their butts being puckered up with what happened to KPMG. I
Yep.
also think they probably, it's this principle that an old boss of mine used to say, where he said, deliver bad news quickly, because the longer you take to deliver the bad news, like, the worse it becomes. If you don't say it right away, if you wait a week to tell somebody what you knew the day after you submitted that, then everybody's gonna go, why did you wait a week to tell me that stuff?
Right.
So like, the bad news, even though the bad news doesn't change, it gets worse the longer you wait to tell it. And I think they knew that, so then they were trying to figure out a way to make it, to take that dynamic away, at least with a story that they, and again, I also could see where Ernst Young legitimately did want to go, hey, let's figure out if this is a big problem or just a little teeny problem before we hang ourselves out to dry. So that part kind of makes sense to me.
So when EY finally disclosed this, as we said, they went to the PCAOB first. And on the one hand, that kind of makes sense because the PCAOB is the auditor regulator. But the SEC is the one who made the inquiry. So maybe it doesn't make sense at all. In any case, the
Right.
SEC was not happy that this is the route that they took, or that's how they handled it. And the SEC, they didn't even find out about it until March of 2020. So that's almost 9 months after the June 19th, 2019 request. And the SEC actually only found out because the PCAOB notified the SEC that that EY had disclosed that a number of their employees had cheated on these exams. So they didn't even get it. They didn't even get it firsthand.
Right. And that, to me, and that's where Ernst Young stuff seems shady to me.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, so we told the SEC a half truth, and now let's tell the whole truth. So it's like, we were talking with mom, and we told her what, I mean, we didn't lie to her, but we didn't really totally tell. So, but we told dad everything. And
Yep.
so collectively we told our parents everything, is what they
Right.
what they think, but they didn't. They were just trying to not get in. I mean, that seems more calculated than, like, that seems not just more. That seems absolutely calculated in them trying to knowing that they screwed up and trying to still somehow weasel their way out of it.
Yeah. And when you read the when you read the SEC order, I mean, you can tell they're pissed. And I love reading SEC. Yeah. I love reading these SEC orders, and they're like this all the time. Like, no matter what you're reading about, like, the subtext of it is so good. Like, I don't know, somebody over there knows what they're doing. But anyway, here's a good quote. By withholding information about misconduct that EY knew SEC staff was investigating, EY's continued misrepresentations to the SEC's Division of Enforcement significantly hindered the SEC's ability to take action that would protect investors from audit professionals who do not understand their ethical obligations, fail to act with appropriate professional integrity, and have not met or needed to cheat in order to meet minimum professional requirements to demonstrate their knowledge of important accounting principles. So they're, like, really getting on their high horse about it. And
right. Yeah.
And they're just like,
yeah,
you guys are in a position of authority and responsibility. And oh, by the way, you're fucking terrible at it.
Right. See, if you had just read that slightly in a more stern tone,
yeah,
it would be like, by withholding information about misconduct that EY knew SEC staff was investigating, Ernst Young continued misrepresentation and their total dipshits and fucked.
I mean, we should, maybe you and I should do a dramatic reading of these or something. I think it'd be kind of fun.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Anyway. All right. So for all this cheating and all this pussyfooting around the cheating, the SEC, as we mentioned, fined EY $100 million. This was the largest fine ever imposed by the SEC on an audit firm, for what it's worth.
And that's crazy to me too.
Yeah.
When you think of the massive audit failures of gigantic firms, that the biggest fine ever imposed was for cheating on CPE. I mean, that's, again,
it's crazy to me to think that if you think about Lehman Brothers, who went bankrupt in 2008, EY was the auditor of Lehman Brothers. Okay. There was a lot of shady stuff going on at Lehman Brothers that eventually led to its bankruptcy. EY, it was the bankruptcy examiner, like the person who basically does the autopsy of the bankrupt company. At the time, that person or that law firm issued a report that said, yeah, there's claims against EY here. Like they are not absolved of responsibility. And like, you're telling me that this fine is bigger than whatever the fine was that EY paid, because they certainly paid a fine. I'm sure they did. I have to look it up.
Right.
I don't know off the top of my head. But like
Right.
this fine is bigger than the Lehman Brothers fine. Like that's crazy to me.
Right. It's like, hey, remember that thing that arguably sparked the biggest recession that's ever going to happen in any of our lifetimes? Yeah, that was cute. But what we're really pissed off about is cheating on tests. And
Yep.
that's sort of the message.
It's kind of the vibe I'm getting here. Anyway,
yeah.
In addition to the fine, EY also agreed the firm agreed to several quote unquote undertakings, which included reviewing its policies and procedures around ethics and integrity, they have to deliver a written report to the SEC summarizing any changes that it will make and implement related to that review.
Right, which is like we will send out emails reminding people to be ethical once a quarter rather than once a year.
That's right. Yep. And they also have to retain an independent consultant to review all of it, who will also write a report and submit that work and recommendations to the SEC. And I mean, all this, like all these gory details are in the order. And if you care to read all that stuff. But I just have to say, Greg, this is quite a mess, man. It's kind of it's a fine mess is what it is. And I think my favorite quote that I read about this story was in the Wall Street Journal, and it came from a Stanford law professor by the name of Joseph Grunfest. And he told the Journal, quote, "This conduct was more than just dishonest. It was remarkably stupid." And he went on, "The stupidity might actually trump the dishonesty, if that's possible in this situation." So, Greg, did we learn anything? I mean, there's some obvious things, right? Dishonest? Yes. Remarkably stupid? Absolutely. But I'm just wondering what else is on your mind here, if we learned anything.
Well, this reinforces something that I researched. I'm going to put research in quotes, but I researched a long time ago about cheating on continuing education, and that it is endemic in the accounting professional. Do you remember the article that I wrote for Going Concern about CPE fraud?
I don't. Oh my gosh! Now I want to go back and read it.
Oh, it was. The article itself was fine, but what was the best part, because that's the what I found was the most interesting thing of what you created on Going Concern was this very active group of consumers of the media that you put out, who were very, very willing to throw all of their dissatisfaction about the profession back at us in the comments.
Yep.
So I wrote this post about how continuing education fraud is rampant in the profession, and we got so many. I actually gathered a bunch of stories for the post that I wrote. One of which was great, that there was somebody who earned 40 hours of continuing education in one day. And so they earned 40 hours of CPE.
Wait, is that how it works?
In 24. Yeah. Well, that and like my thought was, this guy cheated so hard that he literally broke the time-space continuum. That's how hard that guy was cheating.
Wow.
So you get these stories, but then in the comments, it was crazy. There was actually someone who said that as an intern at, I believe it was at a Big Four firm, they were driving in a car. The partner who was in charge of whatever engagement they were on was driving these interns and these lower level staff members to an engagement, and in the car, on the car phone, on the speaker, that the partner calls his wife, who's also a CPA, and says, "Hey, honey, were you able to pass that that ethics CPE test for me?" So like very publicly going, "Hey, babe, you cheated on that ethics exam. Did you do it? Are we good? Am I good to go on that?" And with that is showing these impressionable young staff people and interns that that's absolutely acceptable to do that kind of stuff in our profession. And there was even to the point where there was a guy who he let his license lapse now, so it's not as big of a deal. But back when he still had an active CPA license, he told me that because like I said, in Utah, every 2 years we have to have 80 credits of CPE. He said every year in the week between Christmas and New Year's, and this was before like online based CPE was so ubiquitous. So back then he would be like, in the week between Christmas and New Year, I would just order a whole bunch of self-study CPE. I wouldn't read any of it. I would just go and take the quizzes for all of it, and I'd use like the index to find the answers in the stuff. And he's like, yeah, I could burn through 80 credits easy in a week doing that. And it's like, yeah, that's cheating. That's not, you didn't get 80 hours of continuing education. You passed, you half-assed it and used a workaround to not learn an hour's worth of material, but to learn the answers to 5 questions.
Right.
So it's everywhere. And that's the whole problem that we're talking about in this case. But what's really disturbing about that is really the underlying concern that everybody has about this. And what we find when you start looking at behavioral psychology is that unethical behavior primes you for more unethical behavior. So even if you feel like it's very benign to cheat on your continuing education, that still primes you to cheat in other areas as well. And so you might go, it's no big deal to cheat on my continuing education, but it is a big deal if now you're more likely to sign off early on an audit for a company that's committing fraud or whose financial statements are misleading. And again, I see this all, because that's the concern. And that's, even if you watch, like, if you go on YouTube and you search for this EY ethics cheating thing, you'll see over and over again that the people's reaction in the media is these people are responsible for making sure other firms are not cheating, but they're cheating themselves. And that's the whole thing, is that there is a legit concern that it's going to spread not just from CPE, but it's going to make you soft in the areas where you absolutely should not be soft when you're an auditor and when you're charged with things like the public good and the stability of the markets. So that's a big damn deal.
Let me just ask you one thing, because I wrote about this when it happened. I remember writing about it in my I have a newsletter that I write for my employer, Gusto, who does not sponsor this podcast. But anyway, in the newsletter that I wrote, I said, I don't condone this cheating, and I think it is unacceptable for this profession. But I think the one thing I would say is that I understand why it happens. Okay. So I think there's a difference between being all right with it or not taking it seriously versus asking the questions like, how can this happen? These are supposed to be professionals of the highest integrity, and we're entrusting them with the capital markets and this and that and whatever. And like, look, man, everybody that works in these firms is made of the same stuff as you and I. And if they're under pressure, if they're under pressure from the hours they're working, or maybe they've got a awful boss that's putting a lot of pressure on them, and they have all these additional responsibilities into their regular work. So like passing, getting the CPE for their CPA, like they're gonna, at some point, we talk about a lot, ego depletion, right? They're gonna break down at some point.
Yeah.
Like they can't resist it. They can't resist the pressure forever.
Yeah.
And so to act surprised that this happens, I think is kind of, at least for me, being familiar, at least for us, I think being as familiar as we are with the accounting world, is that this doesn't really surprise me because people are under tons of pressure all the time in these firms. And yeah, eventually, people are going to cut corners. They're going to do things that whether they probably know that it's wrong, but they have to do it anyway because they have to make things work. Like they have to make their lives work. They have to make their professional lives work. They have to they have this endless to-do list and they've got to get all this stuff done. So to me, the behavioral bit of it is really complex. And the firms do not address it effectively with these emails saying, "Hey, no cheating, okay, guys." Like that's not going to get it done.
Yeah. No cheating, but please work 90 hours this week. Okay, that's it for this episode. And remember, if you email answers to an ethics exam, it's okay to do that as long as you're emailing the wrong answers to the ethics exam.
And also remember, if you know some colleagues who are cheating on an ethics exam, telling on them is fine. They're cheating on an ethics exam, for crying out loud. God damn it.
So if you want to drop us a line, maybe narc out one of your coworkers for cheating, please send us an email at ohmyfraud@earmarkcpe.com. And Caleb, if they just want to reach out to you but want to leave me out, how can they find you out there?
They can tell me about cheating on Twitter at Newquist or at LinkedIn, my full name, / Caleb Newquist. Greg, where can people talk to you about cheating?
My Twitter handle is @GregKyte, and I am also on LinkedIn / Greg Kyte. Kyte with a Y, not with an I, because my ancestors were just as bad of spellers as I am.
Oh My Fraud is written by Greg Kyte and myself. Our producer is Zach Frank. If you like the show, leave us a review or share it with a friend. Rating the show and leaving reviews helps people find the podcast. Do you like this podcast? Then leave us a review. It'll help other people. Isn't that great? Helping people? Be sure
nice.
Also.
I'm going to send out an email to everybody saying it's good to help people.
Yeah. Also subscribe on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And for the accountants, if you listen on Earmark, you can get CPE and you won't have to cheat. Or maybe you do. I mean, I don't know. You shouldn't cheat.
No.
Though. Don't cheat.
No.
Don't cheat.
Jesus, Caleb. You could. But are you that kind of person? I mean, think about it. Look at yourself in the mirror.
Are people going to hack Earmark? Is that what's... I mean, I don't think so. Take the test.
Yeah, I don't think so. Well, bad people will.
Join us next time for more avarice, swindlers, and scams from stories that will make you say, "Oh my
fraud."